Hey everybody, how you doing? And welcome to episode number 140 of the John Riley Project. And this guest of mine, I'm so pleased to have him here today. There's been a lot of demand for this man to be on the podcast, especially from some of our friends and neighbors here in Poway. I'm pleased to introduce Mr. Phil Factor. How you doing, Phil?
I'm doing great. How are you doing? Thanks for having me.
My pleasure.
I'm just as excited as you are. When the first time I met you on the corner, I thought, wow, this will be something I'll really enjoy doing. So here we are.
Here we are. Yeah, we met out on the corner of Pomerado and Twin Peaks in Poway, during the political protests on Sunday mornings. And so just really pleased you had an opportunity to join me here. And thanks. I'm hoping we're going to get a chance to talk about some local Poway topics, talking about maybe some national issues. There's so much in the news right now. But before we get started, maybe you can give our listeners and our viewers just sort of a quick biography. Who is Phil Factor and what's your background? And tell us a little about yourself.
All righty. So back in 1976, I came to Poway Unified as a teacher. I was very, very fortunate to get hired at a time where not too many teachers were getting hired across the country. And I was fortunate that Pat Holligan and Dave Stein and Dr. Bob Reeves saw enough in me as a football coach and a teacher to hire me. Mm-hmm. And I was really young at the time, age 23. Had been married for 2 years. I ended up marrying my high school sweetheart. Nice. And we're going on our 50th year together, which is real awesome. We have 2 kids. Yeah. Brought them up in Poway. When we first got there, we lived right in Rancho Penasquitas, right down the street from Mount Carmel High School. Mm-hmm. And we lived there a couple of years and looked around the area and we said, we want to live in Poway, but we couldn't afford it. And so we ended up in San Marcos for 10 years, where we raised our boys. My wife went off to medical school and got her physician assistant's license. Nice. And I was a Mr. Mom for 2 years. So all right. I experienced, really having the kids and stuff and taking care of them, being fully responsible, at the same time teaching. And while that was going on, I got involved in drug abuse prevention work. The Just Say No Club and a program called Safe Rides, which I'm hoping that we'll talk a little bit, about in either this episode or another one in future.
Sure.
So with that, I really was involved right from the get-go in volunteer work in Poway. In fact, the first year I got there at Mount Carmel, I opened up a program that was called Give a Kid a Christmas. And it was a part of adding to the food cupboard that was run by a lady by the name of Angie Brinkley. I wonder how many people still remember her. And she ran a food kitchen along with a great guy that is still around, Vern Marston.
Okay? Oh, yeah, I know Vern. Yeah, he's a good man.
Great guy. So I go all the way back to 1976, volunteering for Poway and helping out with food kitchen and other things that I did. And then eventually, of course, I got involved with the drug abuse prevention stuff and started getting involved with the city council. I started working with Jan Goldsmith and Linda Brannon, Betty Rexford, and some of that group. Opened up a volunteer program called Contact. And we were going to bring communities together. We formed a board, and Linda Brannon pretty much headed that. She was, at the time, a city council member. So I've had my feet deep into the Poway community for a long time. Mm-hmm. We currently live up on Iron Mountain Drive, which is the most rural part of Poway.
Wow.
And so we've been there now since 1988. And
wow.
It's, when we first got there, the house was one of the few homes up there. Mm-hmm. And some of the neighbors have come in, and it's just been a great place where we raised our boys. Our boys went to Poway High, and they were fortunate enough to work under Al Toretto and Wayne Brandstetter in the wrestling program.
Yeah.
They were elite wrestlers. They ended up going off to college. The oldest boy, Josh, went to the University of Oregon. He was a duck, quack, quack.
Yeah, right on.
And, the youngest boy got a full tuition scholarship to Cal State Bakersfield.
Sweet.
And so he wrestled there. And eventually the oldest boy ended up going back over to Bakersfield because that tuition was very, very expensive. And he did not have any ticket to help him out. So now I'm going to announce it. Okay, ready, world? Listen, I'm a great grandpa as of yesterday.
Hey,
and so we have a new addition to our family. And,
congratulations.
I think I'm still on a cloud, so what else? My greatest part of my working career was at Mount Carmel High School, and I also got around to all the other schools as an adult ed teacher or teaching summer school. So even taught at New Directions. So I worked the homeschool program and really can relate to some of the stuff that's going on right now, with the virus out there. Love teaching, and a great amount of my friends to this day were my students, and which, in fact, I think yesterday when you and I talked, I said, "Are you sure you weren't one of my students?" So,
right.
I just had an incredible career, and it included coaching and advising. I advised the class of 1983, class of 1987. I was a Black Student Union advisor. I was the Mencha advisor.
Wow.
I ran an international club, ran a lot of different types of activities. At the very end, I was a Gay Straight Alliance advisor, and those kids felt really comfortable just being in my room. I think to add to that is that my college background, I have a sociology degree, and then went off to get my master's in psychology and counseling. So I actually had a lifetime teaching credential with a counseling degree.
Wow.
And so it's I call myself a humanist, and I think that'll really come out here. And as we talk, is that people come first. And speaking of people come first, the second announcement I'm going to make on this podcast is I feel factor am running for Poway City Council District 2. And I know that you already knew that, but being on this podcast, I wanted to share that I plan on being the next city council member in Poway.
This is exciting. Wow. A new grandchild, announcing your candidacy here in Poway for city council. And wow, your background, there's so many things that you've covered in your life and in your career that I think can be very beneficial for you as a candidate and as a grandfather in helping, raise your family. This is great. I'm really excited that you joined me.
When I first used to talk about myself, I'd always talk about football because I played football on one of the greatest football teams in the LA City area. I was on a team that invented the West Coast offense,
really?
The spread offense. And in fact, my coach ended up coaching John Elway. So wow. It's we're actually in Sports Illustrated, and I'm chairing a 50th team reunion, which is supposed to be on 12/12 at noontime, 2020. So it's coming up. So that's what I used to talk about, and then. Of course, being the macho guy that I used to think I was, I used to brag about being a weightlifter, and did some incredible feats as far as weightlifting. Used to bench 465 pounds and warm up with 305 pounds. So it's, that stuff isn't important. The most important thing that I've found is family, friends, community, and living a good life and caring about people.
Right on. So what high school did you go to in LA?
It was Granada Hills High School.
Yeah. So that's in the San Fernando Valley, right?
It is.
Yeah, and that's right, because that's where Elway was from. Because
exactly.
I remember, Granada Hills. What was the deal? He played baseball with Jay Schrader, didn't he? Like one of them was a pitcher and the other was a catcher.
what happened was his dad was a football coach up north and ended up getting a job at Cal State Northridge. And part of it was where to place his son. And knowing that we had a championship football team previously, and our coach was known for the passing game, he met our coach, Jack Newmeyer, and said, okay, I am going to go to Cal State Northridge and coach, but my son is going to go to Granada Hills. And John played baseball and football at the school. And, he ended up having he played both sports up at Stanford and really had the choice to go either way.
Well, he was drafted by the Yankees, I thought, in addition to the NFL draft.
Yeah, I don't know too much about his baseball background, but I definitely was a fan of his all the way through his football career.
Yeah, I mean, what a great career he's had, and now he's GM of the Broncos. So good for him.
Yeah.
Wow. So. Yeah, let's talk a little bit, if we can, about, you're announcing your candidacy for the city of Poway for city council. Let's talk a little bit here locally. What are some of the problems that you think we need to fix here in Poway?
People always ask that. First of all, Poway is a great town to live in. And, a lot of people want to say, Phil, what are you going to do, different for Poway? And, I don't look at it that way. I look at it as, what am I going to do to maintain the quality of life in Poway? How am I going to keep Poway a great place to live? Now, it does need, things that I could see. I'll just give you a real example. One day I decided that I was going to ride the MTS bus. And I rode it all the way through Poway. And then the next day I rode another route. And I was asking a lot of questions. And one of the questions that I asked was, does it go up to the industrial park? Doesn't go up to the industrial park. Now here we have most of the people in Poway that are employed are up in the industrial park, but we have no way for them to get there. And so, that's one of the things that I'm thinking that needs to be looked at. Another thing is we have a lot of different topics going on right now, like the Performing Arts Center. Should that go to the school district or should it be kept by the city? How is it going to be funded, and how are we going to keep that program, alive? At the other end, right in my district, we have the projection of building the farm, 160 homes. And I've walked the neighborhoods and asked people, what do you think? Some of the neighbors are for it and some of them are against it.
Right.
I've heard Kevin McNamara give his presentation twice. And I'm really impressed. I'm impressed with the fact that he's done his homework, that he's prepared to give the city a great community. But what do the people want? And I think that's a big part of it. And like I mentioned earlier, I'm all about people. So when we talk about Phil Factor and what he wants to do for Poway, it's people first. And what does that mean? It means to be a true representative in government. And not be a rubber stamper, not do what the mayor says every time. Let's do what the people want. And as an example, Performing Arts Center. Every city council meeting that I've been to, there's a long line of people waiting to talk at the podium. And guess what most of them are saying? We want the Performing Arts Center to stay with the city of Poway. And there's a reason why. Is because they love that Performing Arts Center. Some of their kids just grew up right on the stage right there. Some of them grew up right on the stage. And they want to see that the programs there continue. They don't believe that the school district can do that. So I want to be a voice of the people, for the people. And the problems that come up, I want to help people solve them. I'm a problem solver. And I'm a person that's going to listen to the people, which I think that's one of the things that's missing also, is a lot of times and I understand we have a tough budget and tough times, but, there's always a way to make money. But what about people? But I think it was the last city council meeting, someone was talking about a 4-way stop sign near Old Coach Road. No, not Old. Yeah, Old Pomerado Rd.
Oh,
and
okay.
The city decided that based on the criteria that they had, there was 5 different things that it didn't meet the criteria, and they decided to say no to the 4-way stop. And I'm thinking, four-way stop. Someone's going to be hurt there first before we put one up. I was looking at the decision making. It didn't make sense. And I thought to myself, how much is that going to cost to put a four-way stop there? Later on the night, they decided they were going to have fireworks. And I'm thinking they're going to spend money on fireworks before they're going to put in a four-way stop that could help save a life or prevent an accident. Mm-hmm. I thought to myself, people first, that's what I'm running on.
Right.
So what am I going to solve in Poway? I think that's the big thing. People are going to come first. I'm going to try to bring in added transparency. Some of the stuff that happens in restaurants after city council meetings. I believe we should be right up front and let the people know what's going on. Print the agendas early. Let them see what's there. Another big part is, I don't know how many times you've been to the city council meeting. There are so many seats open. Let's fill that place because we want to encourage people to participate in what's going on. And when they get to that podium, it's not about that 3 minutes. It's about listening to them. So those are the biggest things for me, is to be people-oriented, to communicate, and let the people know that they're going to count.
Right on. I mean, that's a really nice platform. I mean, especially the whole notion of being a true representative of the people. You're listening to their needs and bringing their values, their concerns forward as a city councilman. That's a terrific platform. Now, I'm thinking.
I want to. Jim, let me hit on this. So, as I decided that I was going to run, which is another story in itself because it was basically came from my wife. But I started thinking about who is Phil Factor. I'm not a politician. I am not a politician. So if you want a guy that is politically just bright as can be, I'm not it. I'm the guy that's a humanist. I'm a guy that's people-oriented. I'm a guy that's going to walk down the street. I'm going to say hello to you, and you don't even know who I am, and I'm going to start talking to you. I'm going to let you know that you are important, and I don't care who you are. I let everybody know that, you're welcome in our town, and I try to make people feel good. I'm the guy that waves to everybody. And, when I was a teacher at Mount Carmel High School, and I think one of the big reasons why I was popular with the kids is the kids knew that I had their back. That's way important. When a kid comes into your classroom, you got to make them feel important. But not when they leave, you also got to make them feel important on campus. And when a lot of discussions came up of teacher decisions or student decisions or program decisions, I was the guy that stood up for the kids. And that's what I plan on doing for the city of Poway, is I want to stick up for the communities. I want to stick up for the people. And I want to be having their back. And so I want to represent the people. I don't want to just represent what is right. I don't want to represent the developers. I don't want to represent giving pockets of money. I want to represent the true people of Poway, and I want to be sincere. I don't want to be a politician. I just want to be Phil Factor up there representing the people.
Right on. Well, you mentioned developers. Let's talk a little bit about that, because there's a lot going on Poway Road. There's a lot of construction that's about to start. There's been some construction that's been underway for a while. What's your opinion on the plan that's currently in place for Poway Road, and are there things that you would do to change it?
Well, first of all, it's too late. The fact is, it's going up, and the plan came through with this current city council. They supported it, and it's up and running. They're as a government agency, they have done all the right steps to inform the people, to let people know, to get everything done. And it was the wrong timing. I know where I live. I live up in Iron Mountain area. And we have been protected by Proposition FF. And so if you're going to make a big change in our area, you have to go through a big voting process. Right. What about the downtown Poway area? It didn't have that protection. And so when the decisions were made, a lot of that, a lot of the commercial area ended up being flipped into, residential condos and, with some commercial additives to it. So, I was at that meeting when everybody said, oh, look what they put up, the penitentiary. We didn't have any warning. Oh, and everybody was all upset. It's an eyesore. And we didn't know this and didn't know that. And I thought to myself, transparency. We should have never gotten to the point where the people came in after and complained about it. So why wasn't the city council way up front and why didn't the people really know? Is the building going to go up on Poway Road? And people are going to say, what's going on here? I didn't hear about this. And the answer is probably, but it's already been decided upon and it's going to go up. And when I become city council member, I can't change that. It was already pre-decided. Mm-hmm. At the last meeting, they were talking about a home that was going to be built off of up in the hills right near Twin Peaks. And they were talking about it being a 2-story home. And it was supposed to be a 1-story home. And they were talking about the height, which is a height limit of 36 feet. And they said, well, what's the difference? It's still going to be 36 feet one way you look at it, 1 or 2 stories. But they didn't talk about the visibility from when you're looking down right near the Target shopping center, you're looking up the hill, what are you going to see? And is that house going to be really right over that cliff and you're just going to see that instead of the mountain? Or are you going to see the mountain and then the house? So I think we just need to be transparent when it comes to the building. I actually have thought quite a bit about this, and I'm thinking that because a lot of the issues in Poway happen to be about building and construction, why don't we actually have a committee that views the decisions, the building decisions, that brings it to the city council? Just like we have a budget committee, why not have a people's committee in Poway that is the overviewer of the plans? So once the plans go through plan check, once they go through the city, now they go to the planning group, which is a city body of community people, and they're able to give their recommendation. So the recommendation isn't just coming from staff. Why not have it also come from the People's Committee of Poway? That's one of the ideas that would kind of solve a lot of this. If we don't get a vote on it, let's have a committee of the people look at it.
Well, certainly a process like that would encourage not only more transparency, but more buy-in from the community. And I think that would be helpful for the city council to do that for sure. It's also, we're talking about construction. One of the other hot topics that's been active here in Poway for the last, 4 or 5 years is the notion of the veterans housing that was supposed to be built on Twin Peaks. And then that was changed. And that they've talked about putting it in the location of the Big Stone Lodge. And that, they haven't really come to a final conclusion on that project. Wonder what your thoughts are. That's not something that's already happened. That's something you could greatly influence if you're elected.
Right. Well, when you come to San Diego, you realize it's a military town. Mm-hmm. And we sure owe our hats and our lives to the great service of our military and our veterans. And so the idea of veteran housing fits right into our community, especially a great deal of the people were in the military. I myself, I was not, but I do love military people and support them 100%. So I'm all, for having military housing. Now the big question is where? Old Stone Lodge, absolutely not. I'm very supportive of the idea of recreate it, put it back in its best days and years, and add it to one of the jewels of Poway as a historical monument. Where they were going to put it right near the soccer park. That lot's still vacant. Nothing's going to be done with it. Don't know exactly what really went down on that, but it was decided that they weren't going to use it there. We definitely need to find a spot. and a spot that's going to make the people that live there happy, but also one that's going to be something that we as a city are proud of because we do support the veterans. So, it's that's a good question, and it needs to be solved.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think one of the reasons that it wasn't built on Twin Peaks is because there was objection from a lot of the neighbors on the north side of Twin Peaks Road. This will be an interesting one to see how it sorts out. If you're elected, you could have a great impact on that process.
When people object, usually the first thing they talk about is traffic.
Right.
You notice that?
Always.
It's going to bring in another 100 cars, and it's going to bring in another 200 people. And the congestion in Poway at times has been really tough. It's kind of been nice with on the positive side of this, virus. We've had less traffic in Poway. You can get from one place to another, and even the lines in most of the places are pretty fast go. But back to exactly where and everybody being happy, I think if we really take a look at it, most people in our community want to support veterans. And so if we take a look and say what's going to be best for the people that are going to live there, what would be a great site to build a residential area for them, I think that's the approach that we need to take.
Sure. It's interesting because you talked a little bit about, Kevin McNamara's project, the farm at Poway up by the Stoneridge Golf Course. And, it's interesting. You actually walk the streets and talk to the neighbors is what you said earlier, right? That's awesome. There's some people that are really for these new construction projects, some that are against. NIMBYism, plays a big role, not in my backyard. What's your angle on the whole concept of NIMBYism?
Well, first of all, I'm not sure what that means. So tell me what your definition of NIMBYism is first. It's not a word I would frequently use.
Okay, so NIMBY, NIMBY, not in my backyard.
Okay.
And so it's basically people that don't necessarily object to the project. They just don't want it next to them.
All right.
They want it somewhere else.
I got it. So a little short story. Many, many years ago, there was a guy by the name of Lucidi. And he owned the Hamburger Factory. And he decided that he was going to move up all the way up on top of Highway 67. And he wanted to build either a horse farm or a golf course. Mm-hmm. So we in the Iron Mountain region met with him when we said, oh, no. Golf course is out. We barely have water. Some of us have water problems. Some of us are trekking water up there. Some of us have wells that have just gone dry. And we're going, Mr. Lucidi, if you put a golf course in there, we are sure to be run out of town.
Right.
Zip ended up going with a horse farm, and he set it up that way. But as soon as he did, he wanted a strip mall on the corner. And he tried to pass it through the city of putting a gas station and let's just call it a Circle K or a 7-Eleven or Zip Stop, right there. And, he thought that it would be a great thing, for the community because if you run out of gas going up or down Poway grade, there was a place to get it. Well, us neighbors thought different. We really believe that it's a farm community. That is where you raise livestock and kids and families. And we didn't want to see that type of commercial go up. So we as a community pulled together. We also went over to the Green Valley Civic Association group because we knew at the time they were the most powerful political group in all of Poway. Mm-hmm. And I went in there and I talked and I got their support. And when it came down to the decision making, after Zip went through the city and it went to vote, the people decided that we weren't going to have this commercial strip mall up on top of Highway 67. Mm-hmm. So where I'm going on this is what are the people that are right next to where the golf course is that are going to be right where the farm would be? What do they really want? Mm-hmm. When I had the chance to make a decision on what was going on Highway 67, I pulled my resources together. I pulled the people together, and we made a decision. Now, see, I'm all the way up on Highway 67, and I'm going to make a decision for someone all the way on down Espola Road, where the old golf course was. I think the decision should be made by the people that live there, that are going to be most impacted. I'm going to be the least impacted guy in Poway. I'm the last home on the top of the mountain, and that's at the other end. So remember I said people come first. What do the people want? If the people want the farm, let the people have the farm. If the people are against the farm, then what else do they want there? How do they want that land to be dealt with? But it should be the people's voice. It shouldn't be about making money. It shouldn't be about anything else other than the people. And and I've told that to Kevin. Kevin and I have actually talked about it. I said, I can support your farm because it's a great project. It has great, amenities to it. It's beautiful. I mean, I myself, if I got off the mountain, I would consider living down there. But the fact is, right now I don't. So what do the people think? Do they want it? And I think that people need to show up at the city council meeting, and they need to voice their view, and they need to write each one of the city council members, and they need to say, we want this, and they should get what they want.
Well, when you were walking the streets up in that area around the former Stoneridge Golf Course, what were the people there telling you? What were the comments of the neighbors about the current state of the land at Stoneridge and their opinion of the project, the farm project? What were you hearing?
Yeah, I heard some of the worst stuff. It's like it was a fire hazard. I heard people say that, my property value has dropped down. My house is right back to it. And I'm worried, what are they going to do here? I heard people say, well, what if they put tennis courts right behind my house and, a parking lot? And what's that going to be like? And then and the other thing is people said that they were tired of looking at all the weeds, and they were tired of some of the vandalism that was occurring there. And they were saying, we just want something done. And we want it done fast. So, it was really a mixture of people. And I made sure that I asked people from different age groups and in different households. One lady was a renter, and she said, I wish I could vote and make a decision. She goes, I would like to see, it developed into more condos like the one I'm living in. And then I had another guy said, let's just let it go natural. And, like the fact that, we have trails and we could use more trails, and let's keep the natural terrain and let it just go wild. So, I heard such a variety of thoughts there that really said that it was a true collective of different views. But when I went to the meeting at Painted Rock, I heard different. I heard most of the people were nodding their head. They were looking at it. They seemed like they were supportive of the farm. When I went to the city council presentation, by the planning group, I saw most of the people ask great questions, and I saw a lot of support there again for it. So when there's been meetings, I've heard most people nod their head and say yes. When I've talked to individuals, I've heard some no's, some it doesn't matter, and some yeses. Well,
as a longtime Poway resident, as you've gone and knocked on the doors, what's your instinct tell you? Because this is going to go on the ballot in November. I mean, it's not a done deal, but it likely is going to happen. And then the voters will have a chance to vote to change Prop FF to rezone that land. And then they're going to also have the opportunity to sort of lock in the plan that Kevin McNamara has presented. It's all kind of one vote. How do you think that's going to go here? Is it going to be another no like we had a few years ago? Or do you think the voters are going to say yes?
Well, you got to remember, before Kevin got this, it was the developer from up in Beverly Hills. And,
Schlesinger, right?
Yep. And, he had the Escondido manure thing that he pulled on the people. He ended up buying out the Rancho Penasquitos, golf course in that area. The people in Poway are different. And I think that we really want to say and what's going to go on. We also want it to be the right thing for people. So, I think as long as it goes open to the people for decision making, there's going to be people that are unhappy with it. But at the very end, majority rules. And I think the people are going to be satisfied.
Okay. Well, there you are. The humanist Phil Factor. Whatever the people want, the people should get, right?
That's right. People first.
Okay. There you go. So, let's, if you don't mind, can we just sort of switch gears a little bit, and talk a little bit more broadly about some of these larger issues that are happening. We see them on the news, related to equal rights and police brutality. And even here locally in Poway, we've seen protesters out on the streets. They've been very peaceful, but very loud and firm in their opinions. What's your take on what's happening in America right now?
Wow. I don't consider this right now. I consider it going all the way back to Reconstruction era.
Yeah, that's true.
I truly believe that we're talking about over 400 years of a problem that is that we weren't treating people equal. Right. And when people came to this country, some people were not considered humans. And the fact is they got it wrong, because all humans we're humans.
Yes, exactly.
And we're not black and white and brown and Native American and whatever you want to identify. We're human, and human first. And that's where we got it wrong. As great as this country is, and I know I've heard you say it, I know that it's what this show is all about. It's called Life, Liberty, and the Pursuit of Happiness.
That's right.
And where did that come from? That even came longer than 400 years. That came from the time period where, the light bulb finally turned on, and we were supposed to take a look and say, how are we going to change this king and queen and emperor stuff? It was the period of enlightenment.
That's right.
And those great philosophers came up with some pretty darn good ideas. And when we built this country, when the first explorers came over here and the first people that came over to colonize, a lot of them wanted the freedoms that you're talking about. They wanted religious freedom. They didn't want to have slavery. They didn't want to have anybody tell them how they're going to build their house and where they're going to build their house. They wanted to come over here and have prosperity. And they wanted to be able to raise their family in a place that they felt comfortable. And then what happened was people got greedy, and greed and bad decisions brought over hate and discrimination, violence. We're talking about what's going on right now. And, often I put my shoes on and I think, okay, these aren't the same shoes that the Native Americans wear. What are they thinking right now as we're going through all this stuff in this country? Are they thinking they're corned beef or chopped liver? I'm thinking that we left them out of all the laws and all the rules and all the decisions. That's and right. We lied to them right from the get-go, right from the very beginning. And believe me, Black lives do matter. And it's so important to me, but it's all human beings that matter. And I think we've done a poor job of that. And this is a perfect time for us. I see it in our youth. I really have that sense. In the last 3 weeks, something positive is going to happen. People are going to realize that we've had it wrong for over 400 years. And we're going to start caring about people. We're going to start caring about how we treat people, not only under the law, okay, but next door neighbors, how we treat people in the classroom, how we treat people when they walk into a doctor's office, how we treat people when they walk into the city council meeting and they get to that podium and they want to speak? Are we going to judge them based on their skin color, or you know, that they have the best looking shoes in town? Or are we going to treat them as people? And people are human. There was something else that I'd mentioned to you one of the times that we were talking prior to the show. And I said, you know, I'm a humanist. And when I'm asked to fill out some kind of information sheet about employment or the census or whatever, and I'm asked questions like, what gender are you? What race are you? You know, what ethnicity are you? You know what my answer is? Human.
Right on. That's the race, right?
Human. So we're all one category. We're all one category. So that's one of the things, is that when I hear my friends who are have been discriminated against, including me, I start thinking, why? What's been going on? And I want to also share this. All the way back into 1971, when I was off at UC Riverside getting my undergraduate degree, my first roommates or teammates on my UCR football team, and they were black. And I had never, ever been around a whole lot of black people, although I had black people on my football team, and they were all my good friends. But I lived with black people. And I was so inspired by their culture and who they were that I ended up taking Black Studies classes at UC Riverside.
Right on.
So the thing I remember most was walking into class the first day. So when you take a Black Studies class and you walk in and you're, well, I've never been called white. I've always had a skin color that says, who are you? You know, what are you? Yeah. Again, I'm human. But right. I walk into the Black Studies class and I take a seat and I start looking around, and there's about 3 or 4, you know, white guys in there, and everybody else is black. And the professor says, tables turned. You guys are finally figuring out what it's like to be chocolate chip ice cream. In this case, the ice cream is chocolate and you're the white chips.
Right on.
And I started thinking about that is, you know, for me, it was a great thing because I was accepted, I was respected, and I had lots of friends in that class. And I never felt what the black people feel when they walk the streets in Poway or in Rancho Bernardo or Rancho Penasquitas, or where they're considered as a smaller population, a minority, a true minority in terms of number count. Because I felt comfortable being in that Black Studies class, I started acculturating. I started assimilating into their hand clap and everything, you know, started walking their walk, talking their talk, and really enjoying the music and you know, yeah, all aspects, including art that they were sharing in their black art. My next class that I took was a Russian studies class. Now you got to remember, this is 1972, 73, Cold War time. So I'm taking a Russian studies class at UC Riverside. I walk in and I'm thinking, this is going to be like the Black Studies class. I'm going to learn some Russian culture. Right. I walk in and they're all looking at me. They start talking and I'm not talking back because they're speaking Russian.
Oh my, okay.
I was truly an outsider. And there was definitely a lot of animosity in that room that I felt because I was the American and they were the Russians that came in and they had their own Russian community. And I truly was an outsider. And it made me start thinking, now the table is really clear, okay, that I'm coming into a place that's not a safe place for Phil Factor. They made me feel unsafe. So how does this all fit? Let's go back to the original part. Have we really made everybody who has come to this country welcome, feel welcome? Or do we treat them as outsiders? So, you know, in Poway, what would it be like to not be white and live in Poway, California? Would you really be accepted? Would you really be one of those people that are embraced? Would you be included or excluded? You know, one of the things that I used to hear was, if you're Black and you live in Poway, you must be, your dad must be a professional athlete or your mom must be. Right. Otherwise, you wouldn't be able to live in Poway. Mm-hmm. People used to say that all the time. Mm-hmm. And I used to say, well, what are you talking about? There's many people of all cultures that live in Poway, but you're saying if you're Black, your parents must be rich and they must be athletes. And I thought, wow, what an attitude. That's not the attitude that I would like to, see go in a community that I love, but it was there. And I also want to share that I had foster kids this past year, wards of the court, which is a total another topic there. Wow. But my wife and I, for 6 months, helped these kids whose mom was being incarcerated. And my grandniece, she came in and one night and she said, we had a assembly, and I said, oh yeah, what went on? She said that they were talking about Meadowbrook, but they didn't call it Meadowbrook, they called it Ghetto Brook. And I started thinking about, wow, here we go again. More of this discrimination and segregation and separation and all the wrong things that, are, it's still in our community. So flip back to the original part, 400 plus years. And we're now in the year 2020, and we still have issues in our own community that definitely need work. So that's one of the things that I have some recommendations here, and some really strong things that I think can make a difference. Mm-hmm. And a lot of it goes to the type of training that I had when I was a teacher in the Poway Unified School District back in the 1990s and 2000s. Because we actually went through training on race relations and how people can get along. So this is going to kind of blow your mind, but I did some extraordinary things as a teacher. One of them was, on the very first day, I told my students that they were going to have dinner at one another's homes. And so when they're looking at me, they're going, oh, and I said, yep, that's it. I'm going to take a hat. I'm going to put your name in the hat, and I'm going to pull, and you're going to have dinner at a stranger's home. You're going to get to know them, and they're going to get to know you, and then you're going to reverse it. And the idea there is that it would be a respect of cultural diversity. Mm-hmm. Because at Mount Carmel High School, we had kids from all different cultures that were right there as students. And I thought it would be the only way to start breaking down some of those barriers is for the students to get to know one another outside of the classroom.
That's right.
Get to know what that kid faces when they go home. And I got some beautiful stories. I'll give you one. This is right when Vietnam started, when the United States started allowing the refugees from Vietnam, the boat kids, over here, and they were sponsored. And I remember I had a young man that was Vietnamese, spoke very little English, but he came into my sociology class, and sure enough, he's going to have dinner at someone else's house. And he picked a Black kid's home that lived at right across from what we used to call the Pink Palace, Doubletree. And so he lived in the projects, actually, in Rancho Penasquitos. And he was scared to death because, he had never, ever really seen a whole lot of Black people. And here he is, Vietnamese, and he's going, oh, Mr. Factor, what do I do? And, I said, just go. Yeah. So anyway, I had the kids do a write-up and then eventually talk about it. And he said that it was the greatest experience he ever had. And this is what happened. He went over to the Black kid's house. He went over there. The family just took him in, welcomed him. They had dinner. They just had a great night. His little sister put on a fashion show. Little 8-year-old put on a fashion show for him. Nice. And at the end of the night, she fell asleep with her head on his lap. And this young Vietnamese boy wrote about this experience. And he said, if it wasn't for this assignment, he wouldn't have this new friend.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, right.
And see, that was the type of assignment that started bringing people together and started allowing kids of different color the opportunity to meet kids from different cultures. So when I didn't do that assignment, we would have, because I taught ESS, or no, it was called ESL. Then it became an ELL. So anyway, it was the kids that came from different countries that couldn't speak English. And I taught social science to them. So in my class, I would have a kid from Sweden. I'd have a kid from Taiwan. I'd have kids that came from Afghanistan and Iraq and Iran. They all called themselves Persians, okay? Because they didn't really want you to know that they were from the country that was having conflict on that given day with the United States.
Right.
But anyway, they were all in my class. And you know the way we got those kids to all get along? We had dinner together. We would have cultural dinners. In fact, we actually gave them their first Thanksgiving dinner, okay, at one of the teachers' homes. And my mother-in-law and my wife made turkeys and pies. And these kids sat and had their first American Thanksgiving right there. And that was a way that we were able to we were able to break barriers, cultural barriers, to get people to accept one another. So as we're talking about race relations and getting people along and bringing people together, one of my answers is to get people to accept culture and to share culture and to be able to not just go to the Mexican food restaurant or go to the soul food restaurant or go to some kind of ethnic restaurant, but actually to get to know the people, okay, that come from that community. I was talking to one of our other leaders, great leader in Poway, Torrey Powers. Oh, yeah. And her and I are kind of kicking it around about doing something, which would be a cultural fair, a cultural parade, a cultural activity where we can start bringing people in, which would start breaking some of these things that are derogatory or negative or discriminatory. By bringing people together and have them see one another's culture, will get them to accept one another's culture.
Right.
So, let me ask you a question.
Sure.
All right, here we go. I'm going to kind of play school teacher here for a while.
Okay.
Now, in your previous show, about 2 shows back, you said you were white 4 times. I counted them.
Okay. All right.
All right. So here we go. We're going to start off. Who is John Riley? Who are you?
Well, I'm a husband, a father. I'm a Powegian. I'm a businessman. I'm an entrepreneur. I'm a podcaster. But I wouldn't describe myself as white. That's not how I characterize myself. I did, I guess, in that episode to provide context to some of the comments I was making. But that's a fair question to ask me.
Yeah. You know, we had 30 people going through a workshop in the county ed office down in San Diego. And everybody did exactly what you did. I'm Phil Factor. I'm age 67. I don't identify with any religion. I'm married. I have 2 kids. I have 5 grandkids. I now have a great grandkid. I would consider myself middle class. I'm educated. I have a master's degree. I love watching football, and I consider myself a humanist. The very last guy went, and it was his turn, and we looked, and he said, simple answer, I'm a human. And I thought to myself, bingo. I said, that's what we all have in common. The other stuff separates us and distinguishes us as being different from one another. But bottom line is what we have in common. Bottom line, we're all people. We're all human. Right. And I started thinking about that. And I'm thinking that so often we put people in categories. And for what reason? For why is that? And the big talk now with the Black Lives Matter, which was your original thing. You're saying we have these protests and we have all these things going on, and George Floyd, and we've had Aubrey and all these other situations with law enforcement, but we've had situations in schools. We've had situations in medical treatment. Right now, statistically, there are more Black Americans by percent that are dying, from the virus than there are white Americans.
Right.
And we keep on saying why, and why does all this stuff happen, and why is it going on this way? But the point that I'm going to make is that we have not addressed the fact that we're all people, and we've categorized people, and then what we do is we start giving them less. Someone said this just the other day, I heard it, is that by you just saying your name is John Riley gives your identity. Because if you had a name that was Hispanic and your name was Pedro Morales, or your name was, I'll just think of a Black name. I say, give me one.
Kareem Abdul-Jabbar.
Okay. So all of a sudden, just by that name, you're going to say, well, that person's from a different culture, not part of that white stream culture.
Right.
So are they going to get the job? Are they going to get pigeonholed into this other area where they don't have the same rights? That's the thing. We got to start teaching right from the get-go in our schools that all kids are human, and that it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter on what your race is. What matters is who you are as a person and who you are inside. Yes. And we need to continually work on that. When do we become to the point where we start becoming racist and discriminatory and against people? What happens in between that time when you're a young kid to the time that you end up becoming that adult? We need to make sure that missing piece is there. And kids go home and they hear things from their parents. Kids go out to the community and they see things. Right. And are we teaching them the right things? Are we saying the right things to them? Are they experiencing the right things as they go through those steps? And I think that's why this Black Lives Matter really is important now and in the future, not just because of changing the stranglehold or the way that law enforcement has been doing its job. This isn't about just law enforcement. This is about the 400 years of mistreatment of people. And we have a chance to clean that up. So do I think everybody should have dinner at each other's homes? Do I think that in a neighborhood that we should go back to block parties? Why not? What's wrong with having everybody on your street, no matter who they are, come together and enjoy an evening together and get to know one another as neighbors? Then bring in the sheriff department and do a neighborhood watch. Let them know that that the sheriff is there to serve and protect the neighborhood. So now you got people eating, accepting one another in the neighborhood. You got people all getting to know one another, kids getting to know one another. They're having a great time. The adults are breaking down the barriers. Now that's the next part that I'm going to talk about, is when you're an adult, what role modeling are you doing? How often do you bring people of color into your household? And I brought people into my household all the time of all flavors, and there was a reason why. Not only were they my friends, but I want to model that for my kids. Right. I wanted my children to see that their dad and their mom had friends of all different cultural backgrounds. And they could swim in our pool, they could eat at our dinner table, and they could come onto our property and feel comfortable without feeling alienated, feeling like they're a chocolate chip in a vanilla ice cream jar. Okay. And I think that's the next big part here is, how do you break the barriers? You need to set a positive role model and an example for kids. And you need to show that you too are willing to learn about other cultures and bring them into your life. And then the last part that I think is really important is to trust. I think trust is something that we have messed up on. And being a humanist, Erik Erikson talks about trust and mistrust. And it occurs between the age of 0 and 4 years old, as you know, it's a psychology thing. Most people don't trust one another who are different from you. If you're different from someone, there's mistrust. So how do we get to the point early on in that we can trust people that look different from us, people that are different from us? And I'm also talking about social economically. That's way important, because we do have classism here, which is also a big part of that 400-year thing that I'm talking about.
Right.
We always have had the haves and the have-nots. Am I talking too much?
No, you're not. No, this is good. I mean, because, you know, I think you're bringing up a lot of important topics that are relevant right now, that's, you know, going on in the news in our culture today. But we're getting a great insight into who Phil Factor is right now. And I think, you know, as we're getting into the campaign season, and people are going to be evaluating you as a potential candidate for city council, we're really understanding what drives you, what your values are. I think this is fantastic. I'm loving this conversation. I'm learning so much.
Thanks. I had a football player, kid's name is Wade Lindenberger, back in the 1980s. And he went through Meadowbrook, little blonde-haired kid, kind of looked like Barney Rubble. You know, kind of like, you know, kind of short, stocky guy.
Yeah.
But, you know, I had him as a student. I had him on my football team. And no matter what he did, he was a standout. And I just fell in love with him. And it was like I had a younger brother that I could, you know, work out with. And he and I would do bar dips together, and we would go to the bench press, and, you know, but very bright young man, and one that I just enjoyed. Well, anyway, just the other day, he wrote me a letter and shared it on Facebook that as a professor at UCSD, he was just awarded the first time Teacher of the Year award.
Wow.
By his group of students that were working on their master's degree.
Nice.
And he was sharing that the fact that as their professor, that the award wasn't the important thing. What was important is what they got out of the class. And you know, I wrote him back and I said, you know, you really got it, Wade. You really realized that it wasn't just the curriculum, it was the people. And that you reached them and they reached you. And for that, they got a great education, and they honored you with something that for them was a way of saying, yes, you did it. You orchestrated the perfect class. You put us through a program that we're going to be able to utilize for the rest of our lives, and we're never going to forget you. And Wade thanked me because he said he learned that from me. And, you know, I was fortunate. Like I said, I had a career at Mount Carmel High School and working in the district where the glove really fit as a football coach and as a teacher. You know, and I'm going to say this, I'm going to say it to everybody. You know, I'm not the brightest guy in the world, but I am one of the most loving guys in the world. I have passion. I'm one that if you played football for me or you were in my classroom, you were counted and you were important. And I made the best of caring about you. And that's you know, that's when you ask that question as a politician, what are you going to do for Poway? I'm going to bring it heart. I'm going to bring the heart back into that group of 5 that sit in front of the podium. I'm going to bring heart to it. And you know, I'm going to listen to some of the other wise guys that are up there, and I know they have some great answers, but I'm always going to ask, are they considering people first? And that's how I'm going to make my decisions. And I'm going to say this too. If I do not get elected, it's because Poway found someone that was going to do the job better than Phil Factor. Mm-hmm. And I'm okay with that. Mm-hmm. And I'm not running against Barry Leonard. I'm running for a position that I think that he's had for 6 years. It's my turn. I would like to have a chance. But I'm going to tell you right now, I like Barry Leonard. I like what he says. I like a lot of things that he stands for. Disagree with a lot of the stuff. But guess what? He's not my enemy. Because if you really love people, you don't have those enemies, okay? You include people. You don't exclude people. So, I wanted to clarify that I'm not running against anybody. I'm running for the opportunity to serve this community. And I'm going to take a different approach. Another approach, you're going to be really surprised on this. The endorsements that I get are going to be from my family. And I start off with endorsements from my grandkids. In fact, today I wrote that my great-grandson is going to endorse Phil Factor.
I saw that post.
My next endorsement is going to come from my wife, my 2 sons, and my daughter-in-laws. And then I'm going to open it up to all the friends that I have, people that I've taught, people in the community. I am not going to ask for any political endorsements, any fire department endorsements or sheriff department or developers. But if you're out there and you want to endorse Phil Factor, you'll have that opportunity. And there's a reason why I believe that, is because I want to include people, not exclude people. And I don't want to put name tags of endorsements, okay, of organizations like the union or whatever in front of people. It's the people that are going to endorse me. So I'm going to be the people's candidate, and I'm not going to ask groups to endorse me. So, when I'm out there and people are going to say, are you a Democrat or are you a Republican? I'm a Powaysian. I'm Phil Factor.
Right on.
And I'm that guy that wants to be that person that puts 4 years of really caring about the community. Besides, I'm retired. What else do I have to do?
This has been a remarkable conversation, learning about your perspective on the city of Poway, your perspective on people, and what drives you as a people person, as a humanist. This is remarkable. And I think the way that you were explaining how you're going to come forward with your campaign, you're going to do it differently. You're going to be a different kind of candidate. And I think that's going to be very refreshing. I think people are going to embrace that. So I'm really looking forward to how this campaign season rolls out.
Thanks.
You have something very special to offer, and I think that's terrific.
Thanks. So I do have some problems. One of them is weight gain, and it's been my lifetime challenge. People used to see me in Poway at about 185, 195 pounds running the street, and sometimes without my shirt on, always going to the signal and raising my hand and clapping for myself. But I've been fighting the weight, and I am a part of a weight program group, but I haven't been following those 12 steps, and it's been a struggle. I even wrote it on my resolution for the New Year's that I was going to work on losing weight. So it's right now you're looking at a guy that's hitting 300 pounds, and I should be 190 pounds. And it is my shortcoming. It does change my social disposition in terms of the comfort zone. And so, I want to tell you guys, as I'm talking as a humanist, I am human, and I do have my faults, and I do have struggles just like everybody else. My struggle isn't what a black man would have in walking down the street of Poway. My struggle right now is something that I've done to myself, and that is I've put this hand into my mouth, and I've gained the weight that I should have never ever gained. And when I look at the amount of food that I eat, it's not one taco, it's 2 tacos. It's not 1 spare rib, it's 4 spare ribs. And it's something I control. If I was black, I can't change that. If I was brown, I can't change that. If I was of a different culture, I can't change that. If I was a little person living in Poway, I can't change that. I am who I am. So how do we as people include them instead of exclude them? And one of the ways is let's look at how we treat people. Do we look them in the eyes? Do we talk to them? Or are we afraid of them? Do we trust them or do we mistrust them? How do we bring them into our community so that they really belong? Or do we say, oh, those are the kids that go to Ghetto Brook? Mm-hmm. Or do we say to the kid, hey, your dad must be a professional athlete? Or do we say to the kid, oh, you must go to Midland Elementary because you walked to school and your parents walked you to school instead of drove you to school? See, those are all issues. Those are all things. What we need to do is make everybody feel important and make everybody feel that they are a part of Poway, a part of our community, and that we respect them, we trust them, we include them, and we consider them our community, and we don't consider one end. John, do you realize that there's a real division in Poway politically from what people say on the internet? There's North Poway and there's South Poway. Mm-hmm. When I speak to the people of South Poway, what do they usually say? We're the forgotten ones. Mm-hmm. We're the ones that are treated like chopped liver or corned beef. We're the ones that aren't being included. We're excluding them. So does that really exist? Well, enough people say that. So how do we get through that? Is it a political division? Is it a social economic division? Is it a race or ethnicity division? I think a lot of people consider it a social economic division.
Right.
And it's something that continues to come up over and over and over in Poway politics. So what's the best way to handle that? How do we get through that? And one of the things is to make sure that the South has a voice. Make sure that the South can see what's going on, that we don't hide things, to make sure that we're including them, not excluding them, to make sure that when they come to the podium, they're heard and not looked at, as second class or you're from South Poway. I think the most important thing is that we look at them as being from Poway, right, and we don't look at North and South. Mm-hmm. And again, that's something way important. And it's become more definite, that we've had that division, and it doesn't taste good for Poway. It's not a good taste. What do you think?
I lived about 11 years in South Poway, and I've lived now 13 years in North Poway. So I've kind of experienced both. It's interesting because the southern part of the city is where there's a lot more rental property, a lot more apartments. There's also, obviously a much larger commercial area. So the community is different in the southern part than in the northern part. And so decisions that are made, like for example, the development on Poway Road, the putting in more of those condominiums and the apartments that are going in, it's that kind of construction already exists in South Poway. And so it's interesting how the two different parts of the city have kind of different needs, different issues, different concerns. There's a socioeconomic. But then other times you'll bring this up with people and they refuse to see it. They'll say, we're all Poway, and why do you need to divide us? So I think the concerns of a lot of the people in South Poway are legitimate, at least the ones that I've been hearing. But it's hard because the southern part of the city is built in a certain way to accommodate more of that commercial traffic. So Yeah, I know the division exists. I understand it. I'm not sure exactly how we overcome it. I think part of it is giving them a voice. And I think the voice that they have now is a candidate that was elected, but isn't really someone that has from the roots of South Poway. And I think there's skepticism amongst the people that live in South Poway. And I think a lot of that potentially could change in the November election because District 4 is going to have a voice for the very first time.
Right. And I think that'll bring a lot to Poway. I've talked to one of the candidates for that area, and this person has shared a lot of their ideas. And I do think that they have that all in mind, that they realize the transparency and the voice of the people in that community need to be a part of all of Poway. The one thing is, and I'll say it because Kevin and I, McNamara and I have talked a little bit, but I was disappointed in the fact that there wasn't some homes there that were for low income and that didn't accommodate people that were going to be subsidized, that, the homes there are all going to be big price homes. And, I understand it's a community that is very affluent. It's my district that I will represent, but I also am concerned that the kids that live there are going to school with the kids that are very much just like them, that it's not a very diverse community, and that they're missing out on some of the things that life experience offers. And so it's interesting. When I went to UC Riverside, one of the junior highs burned down, and it was in the area of usually the lowest class. And in Rancho Bernardo, in Riverside, it was a very mixed community. I mean, there was just as many poor white people as there were poor black people.
Right.
But the junior high burned down, and what happened was they started busing. That's why they bust. Before, we thought that was going to integrate schools. They had to bus, before forced busing occurred, because those kids had to go to school. And those kids went to about 3 or 4 of the different junior highs. They spread them out. And the experience that those kids got going to school with these kids from this lower class, area was very enriched. And they actually did a study on that, and they compared it with an area right near Stanford, near Menlo Park, and where they did some of those other experiments like that. But they found that integrating schools was the answer to a lot of the racial stuff that was going on, and that was back in the 1970s. Are we integrated as a school district? Are our kids getting the same experience? I know that when I taught at Mount Carmel High School, it was very, very, very multi-diverse. Kids would come from Poway High that were kids of color. And when they transferred over to Mount Carmel, they said, oh, this is a lot different. It's not cliquey. And we feel a lot more comfortable now that we're at Mount Carmel High School. So I asked that to my sons that were at Poway High. And they did share the fact that the kids don't mix over at Poway High, at least in their eyes. Yeah, they had kids on their team that were black and a couple of Filipino kids and some Hispanic kids. But for the most part, the white kids hang around the white kids, the black kids hang around the black kids, and the brown hang around brown, and Asian hang around the Asian, whatever group. But there wasn't so much interaction. There wasn't, a mixture there. So I think that's a big part of it is how do we get the communities to engage in accepting diversity and being able to, kind of cross-fold. Well, maybe if it doesn't happen through the schools, maybe it can be through other activities. And that's why I was suggesting, as mentioned earlier with Torrey Powers, is to start doing some of this cultural fair and some of the activities. that
I think the cultural fairs could be terrific. But there is one thing that I think we're doing in Poway Unified that's very helpful on this front. Like, take a look at Valley Elementary, which is, the school right near City Hall.
Yes.
It's set up as a bilingual immersion school. It's Spanish and English taught together. And anyone could apply to go to that school. And so one of my previous guests, Gabby Dow, and her husband, Steve, they have 2 children that went to that school. And they were able, again, there was a little bit of cross-pollination, a little bit of integration, exposure to more diversity. I think it's terrific. And I would love to see more of that in our school district.
I totally agree. And hats off to Gabby and her husband for doing that. And I know that from all the positive things I've heard about her is that's the type of modeling that we need, where parents are going to say, I want my kid to get a rounded education, and I want them to have the opportunity to have the social interaction with diverse populations.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And that right there, we don't have to build homes in this area or build homes in that area. If we could have parents decide that they're going to start going to different schools, they would do it themselves. Of course, how do they get there? That's also an issue, the busing and everything else. But, one battle at a time, one solution, we can come up with solutions. But I think you mentioned, something way important. It's the parents that made that decision. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. The parents saw the value in those kids going to Valley Elementary. And that right there, that's a paycheck. That's a paycheck in itself. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's very valuable. And, even at the high school level, there's some of this. For example, Westview has an ROTC program that the other high schools don't have. And so there's a little bit of reasons for people to come together that share a certain set of values, right? So I think if we had those incentives, I think we'd see a lot more cross-pollination. I think you get it. You mentioned it earlier. I think just sitting down for dinner with people, man, getting to know people for real, not just superficially. That's important. Mm-hmm.
Thanks. Yeah.
So,
what do you think let me ask you this question, with all the cancellations that we have and, the fact that we're coming out of our homes slow, are we going to get back to the point where we can socialize and that we can start some of this? Or is it going to be one more delay after another in terms of, I know like my grandkids, they've been in their household now for over 2 months, and they're really social kids. They miss their friends. They had their little promotion drive-through at Terra Bonita, but our kids going to be able to get back into school and have the social interaction that they need, not just the education, but the social interaction. And, here we are talking about race relations, and we're talking about, but we're also looking at, right now we've just spent 2 months isolating ourselves.
Yeah, right. So I'm concerned about that because the schools, we're not even sure what's going to happen in the fall. If they're going to be back to the way it used to be, or if we're going to have distance learning, or if there's some combination of the two. I don't think Poway Unified has really figured it out yet. But I know, speaking for myself, I'm desperate for more social interaction. I would love to have you, Phil. I'd love to have you here, Phil, in my home to do this podcast rather than doing it over Zoom. I mean, we're only a few miles apart.
And this is kind of freaky, huh?
Yeah. And so we miss that human connection. So
yeah, you're not going to get the hug afterwards. I'm going to have to do it from here.
I know. That I'm going to miss on that. But I'm concerned. I don't know how we're going to open up. I don't know if there's going to be more delays. We're already talking about a second wave. I think parts of the country, I know Arizona's experiencing a second wave. Who knows? I know there's the state is starting to open some things up. Yet there's a lot of people that are very concerned. They're saying, "Oh, it's too early. It's too early." But it's tough to get through this. It's not easy.
Speaking of the times, I'd like to just mention the protests that we've been seeing in our own community. And I would really like to congratulate the kids that led those protests. And I would like to also congratulate our sheriff department and our safety people. I'd like to also thank the city council and our mayor for supporting it. And it just goes to show that the voice of people was able to be heard, and that we do have respect. It was hard to see those buildings, boarded up, and I'm thinking, did they really have to do that? Was that necessary? The fear that break-ins were going to occur. I'm not a shop owner or a bank manager or president, but the fact is that we didn't have any of that, and that we did ourselves proud. And that to me, is going back to this hope and this great community, and the people that were involved was a very diverse population. We even had a lady that was in her 80s that joined in. I have a friend that joined in with her daughter that was there, and people honking and waving, but it was mainly the youth. And that's a promise. That's a promise. Yes. And so, it's even though we have been going through some pretty tough times, at the same time, we've seen some good, and maybe some of the things that we're talking about Poway and some of the division and some of the stuff that we've experienced in our generation, maybe this next generation is going to do it much better. And I sure hope the heck they do. I'm going to be right behind them all the way, saying go and do it, and supporting that idea. Yep.
I think it's a continuous process. We get better as individuals, we get better as a society, we get better every subsequent generation. It's not easy. I was also very pleased with what I saw here in Poway. Young people, people coming together for all the right reasons, done peacefully. I think, some people were nervous because of what happened in La Mesa, where part of the city was put on fire. So it made sense that there was some caution, but in the end, it all worked out great, So now it's just a matter of getting that message heard and making the necessary adjustments in our society so we treat humans equally.
Okay. What do you think law enforcement's thinking right now, at least in Poway? How are they feeling? Do they feel that we want to defund them, or that we're disrespecting them, or that we're looking up to them, or what? I haven't talked to anybody that's in law enforcement since all this George Floyd and the Black Lives Matter stuff came to surface. And by the way, Black Lives Matter occurred way before what happened 3 weeks ago.
That's
and
right.
Colin Kaepernick, I'll tell you what, I always respected the guy.
Yeah, right on.
And
I did too.
I always felt that him putting his knee down and having a stand, even though it's not something I would do, because I always was taught to, stand up for the national anthem, and always have. But for him to make that stand because he wanted to let people know that it wasn't right on the way Black people were being treated, he's a hero in my eyes.
Oh, a hero? And what he did was patriotic, because he was, and I'll say standing up, although he was kneeling, he was standing up for what makes America really great. The notion that, all men are created equal. Well, really, all people are created equal. All humans are created equal. And we all deserve our inalienable rights of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. And Black people, were not experiencing that to the same degree. And in some cases, having their liberty and their life snuffed out. So, you ask, what does the Poway Sheriff think about all of this? Again, I haven't talked to anyone. My hunch would be that, generally speaking, I'm sure there's concern because there's a bit of a anti-police fervor that's kind of rippling through society, they probably also recognize that in Poway, the community is generally very supportive of the police. The city council is very supportive of the police. With our city council, the way it's currently constructed, I can't even imagine in a million years they would ever consider defunding the sheriff's department. So from that perspective, I'm sure the Poway Sheriff has a certain sense of security. But they know that things are happening in society that are far larger than them. And they know that something could happen just like what happened in La Mesa, where there was a protest right up to the police station. There were people aggressively throwing things at the police, spraying graffiti on the police station. I mean, it wouldn't take much for the scale to tip in that direction.
Right. You mind if I give some thought?
Please.
So back in January, I signed up for a police ride-along.
Oh, that's right. All right.
Sheriff
We're going to talk about this. Mm-hmm.
And the first time it was delayed and just a little mixture. But when I went on and had a full day, I'll tell you what, I've always respected law enforcement. I've been, always one that even considered, maybe even a career when I was in high school. I thought I was going to become an FBI agent. I think it was probably because of that TV program. But, every time I've had a chance to have jury duty, I've jumped on it. Mm. And so the law is, to me, very, very important. And when I went on that police ride-along, it just confirmed the fact that we have a great sheriff department and a sheriff department that truly does protect and serve our community. And the men and women on it, I think are, we're very, very fortunate. That's not to say that there's issues that, that do pop up and people do think that, they're unfair in this area or whatever. But I would say that Poway gets, sure enough, more than its money's worth of a great department serving them. And one of my things is that I would not defund them. I wouldn't do a lot of changes, but the one change I would bring in is more people involvement. Remember, I talked about this people committee and bringing in people. And I think that if they had more oversight of the people in the community with the sheriff department, I know that our captain had before the virus hit, he was going to have a meeting at the Mainstream Cafe. And that's right when everything closed down. But why not have more of those type of meetings? Why not have more police ride-alongs, sheriff ride-alongs? Why not include the people? Let's go back to things that do work as like neighborhood watch. Let's also take some of the things that we're finding in other communities where some of the police officers are walking the streets, getting to know the people. So wouldn't that be cool if our sheriff department parked their car and walked the neighborhood, when kids were out on the street or when adults were out there mowing the lawn and just chit-chatted with them? Take the time to do that. I think those would be all real positive things. I think that we also could have social services, add social services to our department. I know that I was having a problem with one of my next door neighbors. He thought I was playing music too loud. I thought that, he was, causing some, disruption in the community. We didn't get along. And I called the sheriff department. I said, can you send out a squad car and talk to the guy? And they said, who is it? And I told them. They said, oh, no, we're not going out there. We know he has guns and we know he has rifles. You got to handle it. And I said, well, can I have a community person come in and sit there and work with both of us and try to get us to the point where we're respecting one another a lot, further than where we are right now. Resolve some of the problems. And the community didn't have it. And I think that's something that we need to add is a community liaison person that is going to reach out as an arm from our sheriff department back into the people and be able to hear what the people have to say and bring it back into the sheriff department. And it shouldn't just happen. It shouldn't happen through City Hall. It should happen as how do we work with people? And I think that our commander had the right idea of having that meeting at the mainstream, but we need to have more of those, and we need to have them in other places than being at a bar or a restaurant. we need to have it like at our library, where there is a free speech section there, and people can gather and talk. But
or maybe at a neighborhood block party that you were talking about, right? And having a special guest there to chat.
And
with
I love that idea. I also love the idea that there's an officer on campus, not to bust the kids, but to get to know the kids on campus. And so police task force type thing also I thought was really effective when I was teaching. And I used to have police officers come into the classroom all the time and talk to the kids. And I thought they always came out with a better perspective of the law enforcement. So maybe some of that too.
So I'm sure you didn't have the music too loud to annoy your neighbors, but when you're listening to music, what do you like to listen to, Phil? Well,
I am definitely a Santana, Carl Santana guy.
Yeah.
And big time. I just love it. Pretty eclectic type music. KSON is I live up in the country. You got to listen to some country up there.
Yeah.
My grandson is living with us right now, and he's a hip hop. And I always tease him. I said, if you'd be listening to Led Zeppelin when you're lifting weights, you'd be lifting a lot more instead of this hip hop music. So, I grew up with Credence Clearwater Revival and Cream and Santana, Black Sabbath, and I actually, when I first broke 405 pounds on the bench press, it was to Sweet Home Alabama. Every time I hear that, I still get pumped up.
Isn't it great how music will do that? It'll just time warp you back to a time in your youth. I experience that sometimes with the smell of things. It's not just hearing things, smelling things will transform me back to when I was 5 years old. So. Wow. It's amazing.
It's a trigger.
Yeah, definitely. So music's special. Good for you. Yeah, Santana, man.
He is unreal. To this day, I will listen to Carl Santana, and fall asleep just to some of his music, and a great variety. I mean, from lowrider songs to just hearing a full-on orchestra of what instrument was that?
Yeah, I saw Santana in concert. I think it was in 1982. At the California State Fair in Sacramento, and it was Santana and the Police, and it was a great show, man. I mean, I was a senior in high school then, so good stuff.
I also was a Simon and Garfunkel guy, so it's. But what was I thought, and there's some pretty raunchy music in it, but I thought the best tape that I ever had was the soundtrack from Easy Rider.
Ah, okay. Yeah, there you go.
That's really dating me, isn't it?
Yeah. Was Born to Be Wild on that one?
Yeah, it was.
Yeah. A little Steppenwolf. So good.
It was. Yeah.
Well, Phil, let's. I want to wrap it up because we're going to have you back. There's going to be a lot more we could talk about. But first of all, I just want to say what a pleasure this has been. This conversation, I've learned a great deal about you and getting to know you a lot better. I hope our local citizens, voters, getting to learn about you because campaign season is about to start here pretty soon. We're going to get into the hot and heavy of it. It's coming. So. Do you have a website up, or are there ways people can contact you?
I do. In fact, I have a sign right behind. I'm going to take it off the wall and bring it up so you can see it a little closer.
Sure. All right.
There it is.
Phil Factor from Poway City Council.
Right. So it's my website is factor4poway.com. So my first name with capital letters, FACTOR, and right next to it, FOR, Poway, POWAY.com.
All right.
And that's my website. It's a lady by the name of Nancy. I won't say her last name, does it for me. And she's part of my committee, and and give her a little stipend, but she's really doing a lot of volunteer work. And, one of the things also on that website, when you check it out, is I don't want to be like the other candidates. Remember, I told you I wasn't a politician. Mm-hmm. So on there, I have a philosophy that I kind of live my life by. And one of them is, as I'll give you an example, you ever remember reading that book, The Little Train, with the clown that goes up the hill? I think I can.
Yeah.
And I think that when there's problems to be solved in Poway, I think I can. Mm-hmm. And I always will. And you get over that hill and you realize that it took a team to do it. That's Phil Factor. That's what I believe in. Right. That's just one of the stories that was etched into my mind on who I am as that humanist. Mm-hmm. So I do appreciate being on this show. I've seen quite a few of your shows, and I've always been inspired by you too. And that's why I asked you that question. Are you sure you weren't one of my students? Because, I could see you sitting right there in my room and being that outstanding guy, raising your hand and having a comment and giving your piece. So this has been a ton of fun. It really has.
Right on. Well, again, thanks for joining us here. And let me just also say this kind of to the audience, everyone listening or watching. All local candidates are welcome to join me on this podcast, whether you're running for Poway City Council or school board, or maybe even if you're running for, City Council in the city of San Diego, County Board of Supervisors. If you're running for President of the United States, I'd love to have you here on the John Riley Project. But Phil Factor, candidate for Poway City Council, your website, Factor for Poway. It's Factor. Factor4Poway.com. The 4 spelled out FOR, not the number 4. So that's how they can get in touch with you. But thanks again, Phil. Thanks for joining me.
Thanks. Look forward to the next one.
All right.
Thanks, John.